The playoff opener between the Indiana Fever and the Atlanta Dream was never going to be fair, not when half of Indiana's rotation was missing before the ball even went up, not when their star rookie Caitlin Clark was sidelined with a season-ending injury, not when 6 players, Clark, Khloe Bibby, Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, Aari McDonald, and Deirunas Dantas were stripped away from the lineup, leaving the Fever with a roster that looked more like a patchwork project than a playoff team. And yet somehow Indiana came out swinging. They punched first, building an early lead, silencing the Dream's home crowd, and proving that grit and sheer defiance could still go toe-to-toe with a fully healthy squad. But then came the moment that turned everything. The referees inserted themselves into the story, and the game tilted in a way that felt less like competition and more like sabotage. Stephanie White, a coach known for her composure, finally snapped. She stormed at the officials after a sequence where Aaliyah Boston got shoved off balance with no whistle, while moments later, a soft touch on Ryan Howard turned into a foul against Indiana. White's explosion was so raw, so unfiltered, that she earned a technical foul. But fans watching at home didn't see a coach out of control. They saw a leader saying what every supporter had been yelling at their screens for 2 quarters. The Fever weren't just battling Atlanta, they were battling the officials too. The frustration was justified. Lexi Hull was tagged with a foul despite perfect defensive positioning, forcing White to challenge the call early. Replay proved Hull was clean, but the damage was already done. Indiana had to burn a challenge in the first quarter. Not long after, Boston took an elbow in the face, and somehow she was the one whistled. Over and over, the Fever's hustle plays turned into fouls, while Atlanta's physicality was allowed to run unchecked. It wasn't one bad call. It was a pattern. It was clean contests turning into free throws for Atlanta. It was defensive stops erased by phantom whistles. It was Boston and Hull battling bodies in the paint, while Howard and Gray seemed untouchable. And by the time White finally lost it, fans on social media were flooding timelines with outrage, convinced the league had robbed Indiana of a fair fight. The numbers tell the story. The Fever were forced to use both of their challenges before halftime just to keep the game from spiraling. The Dream, meanwhile, leaned on depth and freedom of movement to turn second chances into runs. Ryan Howard hit tough shots, Alicia Gray carved lanes, Naz Hillman gave Atlanta bursts of energy, and Brittany Griner's presence inside forced Indiana to crowd the paint. The contrast was brutal. Atlanta rolled in fresh bodies each quarter, while Indiana prayed their starters could survive foul trouble long enough to finish. And yet, the Fever didn't break. Kelsey Mitchell delivered the performance of her career, dropping 27 points with near-perfect free throw shooting. Every time Atlanta threatened to pull away, Mitchell forced the offense back to life. She wasn't just scoring. She was distributing, defending, doing everything short of officiating herself. Boston, though trapped in foul trouble, muscled her way to 12 rebounds, anchoring the paint against overwhelming odds. Hull chipped in 9 points and hit one of Indiana's rare threes on a night when the rim seemed cruelly sealed shut. But the absence of Clark was impossible to ignore. Without her gravity pulling defenders out to 25 feet, Atlanta packed the lane with no fear of being punished from deep. The Fever shot under 35% from the field, just 2 for 15 from 3. Without Clark stretching defenses, every drive Mitchell attempted was crowded. Every Boston post-up collapsed upon, and every secondary player dared to shoot from outside, and most missed. The Fever's bench told its own story. All 16 players traveled, healthy or not. There weren't enough seats, so injured players sat in a second row behind the main bench like spectators at their own playoff game. Sophie Cunningham, stuck in rehab, joked she was basically part of the medical staff now. It was gallows humor that summed up Indiana's entire season. Laugh to keep from crying, fight even when your body says no, and stand together no matter how unfair the circumstances. And then came the boiling point. In the fourth quarter, after another sequence of questionable whistles, Stephanie White lost it one final time. She barked at the refs and the tech came fast. The arena buzzed with chaos. Even Caitlin Clark in street clothes had to step in to calm her coach, a surreal image of a sidelined sophomore holding back her leader from exploding further. Atlanta thrived in the storm. They turned the whistle-fueled momentum into a run, stretched the lead, and closed out the game. The box score says the Dream won. But the headlines weren't about Atlanta's balance or Indiana's short-handed fight. They were about the officiating. They were about whether the Fever were beaten by the Dream or by the referees, and yet, if you look past the calls, past the injuries, past the chaos, you see something that can't be stolen. The Fever refused to fold. They played to the buzzer. They fought through every obstacle and left the floor with pride intact. That resilience is why Game 2 matters so much, because now the series shifts to Indianapolis. Gainbridge Fieldhouse hasn't hosted a playoff game since 2016, and now nearly a decade of frustration bursts open as the Fever return home. It won't be easy. They're still down 6 players. Atlanta still has depth. The officiating may still be suspect, but this time, Indiana has 17,000 fans at their back, ready to turn every Fever run into an earthquake. Kelsey Mitchell knows the weight she carries. She proved in Game 1 she can shoulder it, but she also knows she can't do it alone. Boston will battle again, Hull will fight again, but someone else, whether it's Turner, Hartley, or Howard, must rise as a second scorer. Because the Dream will load up on Mitchell, pack the paint on Boston, and dare the rest of Indiana to beat them. This isn't just survival. It's legacy. The Fever's return to playoff basketball is about proving resilience matters, about showing the league and its fans that Indiana won't back down no matter how unfair the fight. The officials may tilt the floor, the injuries may strip away their depth, but this team still has heart, and at Gainbridge, that heart will echo through every cheer, every stomp, every roar from the stands. Game 2 isn't just another chance to tie the series. It's a chance to rewrite the story, to show that the Fever are more than victims of bad luck and bad whistles, to prove that even when battered, bruised, and short-handed, they can still punch back. So, Fever fans, the question isn't just whether Indiana was robbed in Game 1. It's whether you're ready to help your team take back what was stolen. Because this series isn't over. Not by a long shot, what do you think? Were the Fever robbed by the refs? Can Mitchell and Boston drag this team to a series-defining win in front of their home crowd? And will Game 2 finally give us the playoff moment Indiana has waited nearly a decade for? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you believe the Fever can flip the script, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this wild playoff journey.